Hi, it's John here again with another Creative Entrepreneur's Journey. This time we've got the Kyle MacDonald with the story of his one red paperclip journey. And before we get started to talk about how he kind of, got started with that, Kyle, maybe you could talk a little bit about right now, kind of some of the things that you're doing, some of the things that, it's really lighting your fire right now and stuff like that.
I've been really busy painting, so I've been just grabbing paints and making canvases, buying canvases, and I've just been messing around with it and sharing it with friends on Instagram and Facebook. And a lot of people have started commissioning works or buying works that I've been doing. So it's very like, old school, just painting canvases. But then the way that I'm distributing it is sort of I guess it's there's no real business plan. It's just sharing things with people and going from there.
And really, that's the part that kind of really caught my attention about your story was that, when you started, you were looking at all these different ideas and everything like that. So what was it about, like the red paper clip idea? Like what was it that kind of really, this made you decide to go, follow that one and really kind of and ultimately end up going all in on that?
I was messing around with lots of different ideas at the time. And the one about the paperclip that really kind of got me going was that it sort of had a progression. It wasn't just a random thing that I was just doing again and again. There was not specifically an end goal, but there is a paperclip to the next thing. And each trade was like a new adventure. So it was like a brand new project each time that I traded with people. And I just decided to go all in on that project because, I was still working on other projects at the time, but it sort of, 2020 hindsight, 5 years later, looking back, saying it looks like it was very clean and that's all I was doing. But it was by far the most the thing that I devoted the most time to in that 1 year that it took to go from a paperclip to a house. And it was yeah.
That's the thing I talk about different times with, indies and creatives and stuff like that is like the idea of following, their curiosity. Like, in other words, a lot of the gurus and all that talk about passion and like kind of, going all in right away and stuff like that. And I think it's really, like not only hard, but also like kind of very demanding on us unless we just kind of simply, like we kind of, like you said, tried these different things and to almost like, just to kind of investigate, just to kind of see and what is the one thing that kind of catches on with us and stuff. So, like, was there like along the way, like you mentioned the high school friend who kind of like, really kind of triggered some of that idea and stuff, but was there other kind of folks that influenced you, other things that kind of like help you to kind of really start crystallizing it?
I had lots of spare time and I was really obsessive. So I took a lot of that time and devoted it towards making it interesting for myself. But this was sort of at the beginning of, social media. And I realized that if I did things that were interesting to myself and I could explain those things in a way that was interesting to other people, it was a sort of like perfect amount of entertainment to entertain my own curiosity, but to also entertain other people that I required to make the project happen. It was very collaborative, but I wasn't collaborating in a certain way or with a certain group of people. It was just sort of, hey guys, if you want to get involved, we're doing this. So I don't know, there was no real way to get involved. Just had to step up and make yourself, unavoidable, really was kind of the only way it worked out. And it just sort of became a really fun thing to do for everyone.
Yeah, it's funny that way that like a lot of times, if it's something that clicks with folks, it's not about money. It's not, those things can happen and stuff, and that's all great. But really, like people will really, like it's the whole, like Tom Sawyer, that whole thing where like, if you have something that like really catches people's attention and it's fun, that's different times. People will just like raise their hands and kind of, join in just because they want to be a part of it and stuff. So the thing is though, on the other side of that is different times. We find that there's always the naysayers and the kind of like people, like were there moments of, kind of times when like you kind of really wondered, like, well, is this really for me, and kind of like second guess yourself?
Yeah, like I'm a pretty positive guy, pretty optimistic. There was times though when I had a generator or I don't know, an old keg of beer, and I was like, wow, I'm going to try and trade this stuff up for a house. It was always possible, and anything's sort of possible, but sometimes some things aren't worth the effort. And it was a constant exercise in keeping the motivation going to do it. And then near the end of, I was 8, 9, 10 trades in, there's been a bunch of media attention and people were from all over the world were getting involved. Everyone kind of thought, oh yeah, it's going to totally happen. You'll eventually trade to a house. No problem. The problem was I still had to go do it. And you know, when you have a cube box truck or a roll in a film, like not everyone in the world wants these things. So it was trying to find people to trade with was just as challenging near the end as it was near the beginning. In fact, it was in some ways harder because pretty much everyone has something they can trade for a paperclip or a pen or a doorknob. But when you start getting into these larger specific items, you really make the amount of people that can get involved in the trade side a lot smaller. So it was a constant, I wouldn't say battle, but it was being motivated to do this. Definitely having other people know about the project helped a lot. Knowing that if I don't do this, because if I did this privately or quietly, it'd be no real big deal. You could just stop whenever. But since so many people had expectations of it, it was sort of easier to deliver on those, because if I didn't do it, I'd be the guy who gave up and didn't do something rather than the guy who was doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the other things I talk about different times is the idea that, who you were got you to where you are and stuff like that. But then, like, you had to become this other person, to make that ultimate trade and stuff. So in other words, you picked up different skills and learned what you needed to. So, like, what were some of the other ways that, like, some of the other things that you learned along the way and that, like, kind of, that you found yourself transformed in this journey?
My biggest thing that I kind of think I knew it already, but it was definitely reaffirmed, was that if you have an idea and you want to make it happen, the right people will show up and help, as long as you're open to not specifically like other people are going to do it for you, but if you sort of create a bit of a pull, a bit of momentum, it's going to attract people that will help collaborate, and it would be mutually beneficial for everyone. So it's sort of like go into things eyes wide open, but totally blind, no preparation, and just say, we're going to try and do this. Let's make it happen. And people will show up and go, cool, let's make that happen, and figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing, is like kind of, just having that faith, I guess, if you will, or trust that, like, the right people will show up and stuff like that. And was there like kind of different ways that, like, you recognize who was the right people and stuff? Like what was some of the ways that, like, you felt like, things were alignment and things kind of, what was like kind of some of the ways that you recognized that match?
The basic one was just the sort of gut feel. You hit it off with someone. This person seems reasonable. But most of all, just a willingness to collaborate and make something better than not just a gift or not taking. It was sort of like, if we combine our efforts on this, we can make something better than either one of us could do alone. And I think it just sort of became apparent as I made the trades who these right people were. It wasn't really about the things I was trading for. It was the people I was trading with. And the only real stipulation I had was I need to get along with the person, and they need to be willing to meet up. So if someone said they didn't want to meet, well, then it was a non-starter. I wasn't interested. I wanted to meet each person that I was, trading or working with. So yeah, it was just like a mostly gut feel, and maybe at some point lack of other options, and I had to go through with it. But for the most part, it was just the sort of like, this is the right person to do this with, and we need to make the trade soon so we keep the momentum rolling.
And so as you were doing these trades and stuff like that, you were able to kind of keep some of the momentum going by, like, in other words, you didn't just right away quit your day job and stuff like that to do this. Like, you kind of kept things kind of a certain kind of safety, or like kind of like something kind of on the back burner, I guess, so to speak, to kind of, allow you to kind of have more freedom and stuff like that. So in other words, you didn't just drop everything to do this. You had that base to kind of operate from, or like a base camp, if you will.
I guess I didn't really have anything to quit or to give up on. It was, my girlfriend and my family. I didn't really have any assets. My free time was immense, but most importantly, my expenses were really low. Like, if you can find a place to live, internet's everywhere, and food is pretty cheap. So my expenses were a few $100s a month, which gave me tons of flexibility in terms of free time to work on projects. And I think that's a bit of a secret. Like, it's sort of easy to get trapped in, I need the new phone and I need this case for it. And it doesn't really matter. Like, most of these things are free or close to free. And if you can feed yourself and sleep somewhere, there's a lot of value in having 8 hours a day to work on a project rather than 2 being in like a big city near all the action. I'm a big believer in more time allows for different outcomes. So yeah. I think also, for me, like, what I find with for creative folks is that, like,
you know, if you have that time and you kind of have the time to kind of devote it to that, you know, first thing, stuff like that, it helps also to be creative because, you know, like if you're, you know, only waiting to the end of a long day at work and stuff like that, it's really hard to find that creative energy to kind of, you know, whether it's to write something, to kind of, you know, like a message, or to kind of just, you know, design a video, or, you know, any of that, it kind of gets a lot harder. So now that, like, kind of right now, I find that you still share your story and stuff like that, and you do some writing and the painting, stuff like that. What are some of the kind of ways that you find, you know, creativity? Like what do you do to kind of stay creative, if you will?
It really depends. I like going to places where I'm not necessarily uncomfortable, but are new, novel. I find whether it's travel or just walking down a different alley or street in your city, you'll often see something you haven't seen before. Just sort of you'll come up with a new idea that way. But other than that, just eating healthy enough, getting exercise helps with ideas, and then having the time to work on the ideas, because it's easy to come up with ideas and write them down. Not that people write things on a piece of paper that much anymore, but getting those down is easy. But you know, the 5 hours to if you have an idea you want to paint, okay, well, where do you buy paints? Then if you don't have the time to go do these type of things, the best way to kind of keep ideas and motivation and learning, I find, is not limitless free time, but large amounts of it where there's no obligations. Like, it's very easy to fill up your day with, I need to go do this, and I need to meet this person, they have to come back home, and there's no real time to, unless you're working on things specifically, there's no real time in the day if you don't make it. So the best way, I think, is find a way to make free time no matter what, and work on, people say work on what you're doing every day. I'm definitely not the type of person who works on something every day, but if I miss 5 days, then let's try and make a full day where I can work full time on whatever the project is.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, what I find with creatives is at some point they've got to basically, you know, just decide that this is, you know, the one thing that, like, that moves to the top of the priority, you know, because, like, yeah, I absolutely understand different times that, like, other things get in the way, other things kind of take over, stuff like that. But it's like, it's got to move up, you know, or it's just never going to get done. If you never, like, and then I agree, though, like, kind of a lot of people, you know, rely less on paper, but I feel that there's something to writing still. I still, like, do paper journals. I mean, there's something about it that's kind of, like, unique, I think. And so do you actually, like, along with blogging, some of the other things, do you still do, like, journaling, or what are some of the kind of things that you still kind of keep up in terms of your creative habits and stuff?
I try to, whether it's personal or collaborative, just constantly experiment with things. I've been messing around with Fiverr.com quite a bit lately with different $5 gigs, and then doing some myself. It's just an interesting way to, like, for example, I have a gig on there. You can pay me $5 and I'll give you really bad directions, and it's stay where you are, where you want to go, and I'll explain how to totally get lost and not get there. But I find that just by having, like, these sort of inputs that are irregular, whereas yesterday I sat down for 15 minutes and explained for someone how to, you know, get lost from trying to get from Sacramento to Disneyland. I was thinking about things in a different way that I haven't ever done before. And I think being constantly sort of excited by new ideas or new little things is the best way. Yeah,
I think that's the thing that's interesting, is that, you know, to be creative, you do have to get lost. I mean, I talk about that different times as well, that, like, you know, people get so caught up in their patterns, and they wonder why they can't be creative. But it's because if you are stuck in this kind of pattern, like going day in, day out, I mean, sure, corporate America, you know, and companies love that, you know, for you to kind of be, you know, showing up every day to kind of punch in your time card, stuff like that. But it's so, like, counter to how to be creative. And I definitely agree. You have to shake it up and stuff like that. And I think sometimes it's the willingness to kind of, you know, get lost and stuff like that. So you mentioned about kind of, you know, like, that you different times you explore, and, you know, like, kind of where are some of the other places that, like, you find, you know, that you like to get lost, you know, like, besides maybe, like, you know, in a town that is new or something like that?
I like going to very mundane places that that aren't like your typical, oh, I feel so inspired on the beach, or no, like, I find I get better ideas if I'm in a arguably boring place, because if something's really interesting, and you can just be what is it, like, you can just be in the audience and just sort of allowing all that interesting stuff to wash over you, it can be inspiring, but it's also goes against actually creating your own things. And I find you lock yourself in a room pretty much, don't leave the house for 2 days, and turn off your internet and work on something. You're gonna create more interesting things because you're gonna get bored right away, and then you're going to want to work on these things to make, because if you're working on things, it's interesting, and then you start going, wow, if there's a deadline and I can get this out there, I'll make the world more interesting, because right now it's super boring. So I'd say go to places that are completely off the radar. I go to weird strip malls or small towns that nobody goes to, or even just really boring parts of the city, or walk around an office building and just see observe people, what they're doing, and just be amazed by. I'm constantly amazed by, like, just I walk out in public and go, what's everyone doing? Like, are they going to work? Are they? You can't really tell. I don't know. Like, I don't have a daily schedule, so I'm not lost in the pattern. But it's constantly exciting to imagine what people are doing, but also kind of create new realities for yourself by having the free time and putting the work in.
So, like, in terms of like your own journey and stuff like that, like what do you feel is like kind of the out of all the different things that happen and stuff, like what would you say is like one of the main things that you really felt like is something that you learned that, like, you really kind of, I mean, there's many different lessons and many different, messages I know you've shared, stuff like that. So, like, now looking back, what would you say is something that, like, you feel that, like, you can really share as like kind of a big takeaway for you in the creative journey and stuff?
Biggest takeaway is not that things are easy, but they're not that hard. If you put the time in, you can do stuff. And I think instead of psyching yourself out to go, I'm going to eventually one day maybe do this, like this one thing, just start working on things that you're interested in. And within that, the dead wood is just going to clear out. And the things where you're staying interested in what you're doing, and these things that start to get traction, it'll start happening, and then focus on those things. And I think you'll eventually end up somewhere where things start to work out. There's not some way to suddenly make it and everything works out. And there's no such thing as failure if you're working on something that you really enjoy and you're able to kind of keep doing so.
I mean, the thing is, though, you had a vision of, your house and stuff like that, or getting your houses and everything like that. And I think a lot of people kind of get caught in the mindset that that's so beyond anything that they just, like the whole visualization, all that kind of stuff, they can't even picture that. So, like, what was it that kind of helped you to kind of, persist and, like, kind of where, I mean, was it just like, gut stubbornness, or like kind of what was it that kind of, kept you, like, sure that, like, it was just the thing that you were going to keep, striving until you reach and stuff?
I didn't have a backup plan. That was the only thing that I knew I could work. And there, I could have also then just stopped doing that and got a job somewhere. But I knew that I really wanted to do the one-rep paperclip trades, and I knew that other people would probably enjoy it. And when it started to happen, I just focused on it, and I cut out the idea of giving up. I just took it away and just said, no, I'm not going to give up, because so many people know about this now. I'm going to find a way to make this happen. I think there's a very different mentality between doing something for fun or as a hobby and as a profession. Where you're doing it I'm not saying a professional paperclip to a house trader, but if you do something, your work, your art, where you actually are able to make a living and live off that, it's a very different mindset from doing it as a hobby and then going back to work. And there are people that advocate the exact opposite way. There's a writer who he doesn't write, he draws, named Austin Kleon, and he says, have a job and then do your art in your spare time. The security of the job allows you to be much more risk-taking in your art. And I think I think that works for him, and I think it's also a good mindset. I'm the opposite. I think, like, if I had a backup plan, that backup plan would keep reaching into the reality and stop a better reality from happening. So
yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of that. Ultimately, you've got to figure out your own path, because, like, sure, there's other people's, their formula and their wisdom and stuff like that. But, I think it's still, what is it that, like, works for you? Like, it's like, and that's the one thing that I different times share is, like, kind of, still somehow, figuring it out. I mean, you can definitely ideally connect with other people who've done something similar, and that will give you ideas, but it's still not like, not like your own path or stuff like that. So you've definitely beaten, your own path. And now, like, I mean, what's next? Like, what kind of do you know, like the painting I know is one and stuff, but you know, like how do you figure out for yourself, like kind of what, you know, like what is it that kind of will be something else that kind of will grab your attention and stuff?
I mean, I find it's often haphazard. Like something will come along and I'll get really into it for a day or an evening or 2 weeks, and then those will fade out. The ones that are the things that I'm working on that become a long-term project, or it's these little obsessions or these curiosities that turn into something bigger. And I don't think it's always apparent, but when other people, for me, it's always when other people give encouragement or become a engaged or slash even a customer. That's when I go, oh, okay, there's something bigger here than just hobbying around, messing around, having an interest in this. And it's maybe if I keep working at this, there'll be something a lot better for everyone involved. And just constantly trying to pick up on the little cues that the universe throws you that say, you know what, you should actually stop doing all these miscellaneous things and focus on that one a lot more. And I think you can get way better outcomes that way.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is what you said, is like kind of just paying attention to the cues that the universe is giving you, because I think sometimes that's the thing, we get caught up in the idea that it has to be some kind of bright, you know, the lights coming down from heaven, stuff like that. But a lot of times it could just be something that kind of, you know, maybe your first customer, or like kind of, or just some, like you said, somebody just saying, you know, like, yeah, you know, like kind of, I'd pay for that. Like kind of just that one little thing could be the one thing that kind of leads to the next and stuff. So like in terms of, you know, like now, like kind of as you explore these other things and stuff like that, like, what, you know, like kind of where can folks kind of contact you? What kind of things are you interested in kind of folks to approach you with in terms of if they have questions and stuff like that?
I'm open for anything. My phone number, just Google One Red Paperclip. You'll find all my contact info. My phone number's on there. I'm usually doing something, but most people don't call, which is, you know, kind of nice. But if you have an idea or you really want to work on something, give me a shout. I'm pretty open to anything, but I'm not doing anything specifically or not looking for anything. I'm pretty busy doing random things here. But
awesome.
Always keen to learn more and find out more new things.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. I really appreciate your time and stuff. I'm going to, you know, like basically, of course, you know, like share all these in the show notes and stuff. And definitely, you know, I look forward to kind of, you know, like connecting, you know, the other fans with what you're working on, stuff like that. And definitely, we look forward to hearing more about, you know, like kind of your next step and stuff like that.